Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
According to some former members of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the American government in 1965 arranged an exchange program with extraterrestrials from a planet called Serpo. 12 people were allegedly sent and some returned 13 years later. Join myself and Neil here on Aliens Explored as we try to disseminate fact from fiction when it comes to Project Serpo.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Aliens Explored, your weekly look at the skies and the bottom of the sea and the suspicious looking people hanging around you. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
And I'm one of the suspicious looking people hanging around you, Stu Jackson. Wow, gosh, yeah. Suspicious looking people.
Well, you know, they walk among us.
they do.
They've got that finger that won't bend. You know,
Oh, Invaders. That was the series, wasn't it?
It
was the little finger, because the aliens didn't have a little finger, so they had to have one added.
So is it a Quinn Martin production? I remember I was terrified when I first saw it. So I was only little, and I think I was supposed to be in bed, but I was up a bit later, and this thing started. I thought, oh, that looks intriguing, and then I just got terrified by it.
Yeah, easily done.
These aliens that could take human shape, which makes it cheap
insidious
to make.
About that.
Yeah. I remember all the sci-fi horror of the 1960s. So much of it, whether it was Invaders or Star Trek or Voice to the Bottom of the Sea, would involve aliens that could take human shape and look exactly like us, or an invisible presence.
Yes.
Or quite often they would replicate someone because they had that technology whereby, you know, the alien could look exactly. They would mimic someone. So there would be two
Invasion
Captain Kirks.
Of the body snatchers.
Yeah. Well, this was slightly different. That you would actually come face to face with the alien who looked exactly like you.
Yes.
I'm sure William Shatner did it more than once on Star Trek, and it certainly happened on a fairly regular basis on Voice to the Bottom of the Sea.
It only happened once with William Shatner, where he came face to face with himself. That was due to a transporter accident. But he did do the Mirror Universe episode, where he played two different versions of himself in the same episode. But yeah, that's not what we're talking about today, though, is it, Neil?
No, that's not what we're talking about today. No.
It's on a tangent already.
So today we're skirting around we're going to directly address a topic that we've previously skirted around a lot, and that is Project Serpo.
Fascinating subject. So prior to our Close Encounters episode, had you come across Project Serpo? Is that part of your lexicon?
I certainly hadn't come across it before we started doing this.
Right.
I mean, this was to do with the alleged survivor from the Roswell crash, wasn't it? Claiming that he came from a planet called Serpo.
There are, so there's a number of misconceptions around this. There were actually
and that's
two
one
crashes.
of them, is it?
There were two crashes in Roswell.
Okay.
Two crashes in New Mexico around that time. But yes, one of these, the story for Project Serpo is that, yes, one of these beings who survived the crash had long-distance communication equipment with it, and also a translation device so that they could speak English and could understand us.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, basically formulated this agreement that they would come and send for their own spaceship and set up set up Project Serpo, which was an exchange program. I think that alien died before this came to fruition, though. That was, I believe. But yeah, Project Serpo was that. First of all, they came along in 1964 from this planet Serpo, which was the origin in the Zeta Reticuli star system, apparently.
Mm-hmm, which is 40 light years away.
It is. And yeah, it came along in 1964, retrieved the alien bodies, and arranged to come back almost a year later. In fact, on the 16th of July 1965, to do an exchange program. They would give us one of their inhabitants would come and live with us, and we would send 12 of ours, 10 men, 2 women.
And 2 women. And that the ET, he was referred to as EBE1, extra-terrestrial biological entity. Is that going to replace ET as our term for
EB?
It
does in some circles, yeah. Yeah, it does in some circles.
Okay, that's the first time I've come across that.
So the term extraterrestrial, it's a bit like the whole UFO UAP thing. UFO could it's specifically flying, but UAP is more. It could be weather phenomenon. It could be all sorts of different things. Extraterrestrial just means it's from another planet. Now that could be a rock. It could describe. It could be, if there's a mechanical life form out there, robots, it would describe them. But EBE or EB refers very specifically to biological creatures from another planet. Now, it could refer to a plant, but it's definitely biological. So it's a bit more specific than ET, but not as catchy in a film title.
Yeah, more specific. Or I'm trying to think, because UAP is more general than UFO, isn't it? UFO is a bit, because it's only allowing for one kind of thing that you might see in the sky, whereas UAP covers anything that you see up there that you might not be able to identify. Whereas an EB,
yeah, I suppose the difference there is that UAP is used because it is more accurate than UFO. For what UFO
more accurate
is
by
used
being
for.
more all-encompassing.
Yeah, kind of, because we might look at a weather formation and think look, it's a UFO. And we will use the term UFO. Well, UAP would be more accurate in its description. And
also true. If someone said, well, no, that's just this weird thing. It's a combination of clouds and ball lightning and a trick of the atmospherics. They say, well, yeah, so that's what it was until you told me what it was. As far as I'm concerned, it's a UAP. You haven't proven me wrong.
If it's not flying, if it's not flying, then it wouldn't be accurate.
No, but an aerial
if it's
phenomenon,
or floating, or just an optical illusion.
Well, isn't a satellite technically always just falling? That's how.
Falling on a.
It's falling, but it's going so fast. Laterally, that it just keeps missing the Earth.
That's how orbits work. Yeah, I think I remember reading something about that.
It's in a constant state of falling. But
yes, that does ring a bell.
If you slow it down, it will just drop.
Yes. So back onto Project Serpo. I was thinking of a way of segueing, but I can't. So I'll just do it. So these creatures, these extraterrestrial biological entities, known as EBANs, which is very close to EBE, isn't it? EBANs,
yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that's just we've named them EBANs because they're extraterrestrial biological entities. But anyway, yes, from the planet Serpo. Took these 12, they were military personnel selected because each of them had a different sort of skill or area of knowledge. 10 men, 2 women, as we say. The original plan was they were going to be away for 10 years, but that ended up being 13 because something went wrong. Only 8 returned, though.
Well, it said the exchange was scheduled to occur at Holloman Air Force Base on April 24th, 1964, with approval from President John F. Kennedy. But something happened and it didn't, for some reason, the exchange got postponed. Do you think it could have been something to do with JFK suddenly meeting an untimely end shortly after he we have the approval, but it's from a president who's no longer alive, and the new guy in post isn't too sure about it or something, or hasn't got around to.
Could well be.
He's got a lot of stuff on his desk, and he hasn't quite got to that yet.
Yeah, he hasn't got to that page yet. Yeah, theoretically. Why not?
Maybe the Ebens actually saw something in it. So wait a minute, the guy who approved all this has just been killed by his own kind. Maybe we should hold off for a bit.
I think it's more likely the first one. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, because if I was the incoming president and, like, you know, obviously this has not been public knowledge, and this lands on your desk, it's like, whoa, hang on, this is supposed to happen, what, next week? No, we need to take time. Let's push that back. Let's take our time. I want to really get familiar with what the hell's going on. So yeah, I can see that being a reason to push it back. Definitely. One of the interesting that I've read is that the journey, as you say, is 39 light years away. Took 10 months, so that's a light year a week. A week by Earth Standard Time.
So you're going 52 times the speed of light. Is that right?
No,
yes,
you are. Yes, 50. Yes, of course. Yeah,
it's taking you a week to travel 1 light year.
Yeah, 52 times the speed of light. Yes, it's pretty bloody fast.
But I mean, we've discussed all sorts of ways that people could traverse the galaxy, traverse the universe, and traveling distances that are perhaps millions of light years apart. And they don't do it just by going really, really fast. They do it by finding wormholes and other shortcuts through, by warping space or going interdimensionally or
yes. And do you know what? It'd be very easy to let's take wormholes as an example. It'd be very easy to say, well, why don't they just like open the wormhole right next to it, the planet, and the other end right next to that planet, and that way it doesn't take 10 months. But I'm going to speculate. Well, because you don't necessarily know where it's coming out, or perhaps the wormhole itself might have an effect on a planet. Perhaps it takes 5 months to get to a point where you can then open a wormhole. And you can only open it 5 months away from your destination target. So it might be that it could be 39 light years, it could be 390 light years. Doesn't make any odds. Either way, it's going to take 10 months.
Yeah, that would do it.
Pure speculation on my part.
That satisfies me. I'm happy. Yeah. We go through the wormhole. Once we're in the wormhole, it won't take any time at all. But we got to get there first. And
yeah, it would certainly be an explanation at very least. Yeah. So only 8 return. 7 men, 1 woman return. I don't know if you'd come across this in your reading about it. Two of the personnel died on this planet Serpo during their exchange, and 2 of them decided to remain. Now, I find that quite intriguing. Why would you... I mean, so I'm trying to put myself in that position. Yes, going, knowing it's going to be for 10 years... Yes, absolutely. It'd be like just the most incredible thing ever.
Mm.
But why would you want to stay on an alien world?
Well, it might be, Captain Kirk visits some planets. You think, yeah, that would be a nice place to stay, wasn't it? Wasn't it Jar Jar Gabor, who was Queen of Outer Space, from the all-female planet Venus? You can see why men might want to stay there, a planet populated entirely by voluptuous women.
Amazonian types. Well,
Amazon women on the moon.
But that's the thing. I mean, we're talking science fiction. That we're talking here about actual, genuine aliens, and everything would be, unless it is some sort of utopian paradise. I don't know. I find that. I also don't know if it was one of the women who died or one of the women who decided to remain. It may be that just two of them just fell in love and decided they wanted to.
I mean, apparently they planned to stay on Serpo for 10 years, but they ended up staying 13 years because of the confusion in their calendars, because it was difficult to keep track of days because there were two suns that made it very bright and very hot. A day lasted 40 hours as opposed to 24. They mind you'd think that astronauts would be able to calculate something like that, wouldn't they?
You'd hope that the Ebens would be able to calculate something like that. It does seem a bit strange, that one. But I'm do you know what? This is again pure speculation on my part. But I'm going to throw out another theory. What if it was two of the male personnel who fell in love,
and their love,
of course, it's fine. It's fine on planet Serpo. They're not prejudiced, but they might not want to come back to Earth.
Yeah, back in the 1960s, I can imagine. Well, in the early 1960s, they might have thought, yes, no, they wouldn't understand our love on Earth. Whereas for the Ebens, it would be like we don't care. It's a different species, and
I think homosexuality was still illegal in England at that time, wasn't it?
It was decriminalised in 1967, the 1967 Sexual Offences Act, which allows for a sexual act between two men over the age of 21 in private. So the military weren't covered by that act, for instance, and military personnel. At the time I was in the army, military personnel could theoretically get a 5-year prison sentence for engaging in that sort of conduct. But the reality was that the army was surprisingly more progressive than the law of the land. I remember I was with an infantry regiment in Germany, and two guys who were supposed to be on guard, well, they were on guard duty, supposed to be patrolling the perimeter, were found having sex. And I remember the sergeant major saying to me, "Don't worry, we know how to deal with their sort." And I thought, that sounds a bit ominous. So
they're going to get shot.
Yeah, what do you do with their sort then? And he said, we put them in mortars platoon. And I said, oh, why mortars platoon? He said, well, that's the gay platoon. That's what, and it was. There were the two heavy weapons platoons, mortars and anti-tank, tended to be the sort of older soldiers, where the average age of a rifleman was probably about 19. These would be old lags, not NCOs, but they'd lived in their own little quarters on the edge of the barracks, and no one bothered them. They just got up to wherever they got up. They would only give lip service to good conduct and military discipline. But they were heavy weapons experts, so they were necessary people. Have been put up with, but a CO.
I mean, we've become much more progressive these days, of course. But back then, I can see why
it wasn't so much for. It wasn't so much for progressive reasons. It was that a commanding officer, if he dealt with it internally, he can keep it all within the regiment, or all within a small number of people within the regiment. If it goes to court martial, it goes beyond the regiment, and the next thing he knows is his peers are going to be taking the piss out of him for having a gay regiment.
I know. I was trying to segue that back to
right,
subject,
and I resisted. Resistance is useless. Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, that's pure speculation on my part. I really wouldn't know. But yeah, so I mean, it's a hell of a story that they tell, a hell of a report. It's come from, and this, I'm a little bit saddened by this, but it's come from anonymous United States government and military personnel, but various, not just one. There's various sources, like allegedly official sources, for this. And it is talked about quite widely.
Yeah, no, they learned that the population of Serpo at the time of their visit was about 650,000, and they were all Ebans. There was no other race or species on the planet other than Ebans. So what did they eat? Presumably there were other species of plants rather than animals.
Or they grew their own food perhaps, or synthesized it.
So I'm assuming
we're not that far from that technology ourselves. We can grow meat in a lab. We can, we can synthesize proteins, and we're not far away from being able to do that. So, you can imagine a species, millions of years in advance of us, technologically speaking. Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. They wouldn't need a food chain or anything like that. And of course, it is possible that Serpo is not their homeworld, but rather maybe a colony.
That's possible, isn't it? Yeah.
Or maybe they're the only species because they've eaten the rest.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe they are the survivors of a catastrophic war. I always think that when extraterrestrials come to visit us, they come to sneer as much as anything and see how primitive we are and how we only make technological advances if we think it will give us some advantage in a future war. We're pretty much barbarians. We're the same. We're not much evolved emotionally from 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, where they're still the same barbarians who will fight a war.
Technologically, we have advanced massively, though, certainly over the last few hundred years. I discovered a thing very recently that absolutely blew my mind, is that a Tyrannosaurus Rex, if you look at the timeline of the planet, it is chronologically closer to an iPhone than it is a Stegosaurus.
I saw that. Because we tend to think that the dinosaurs were all sort of there at the same time, don't we? Or roughly, they all got wiped out together. We don't think of the process of evolution and extinction was an ongoing thing even then.
Exactly.
I suppose because
it led some credence to the idea of I don't know if you're familiar with this hypothesis, this theory that people put out, that the dinosaurs did in fact evolve into intelligent a saurian race, like humanoid intelligent race, but they buggered off in spaceships.
I haven't heard that one. Or maybe David Icke would say they actually became kings and queens, and they became our rulers.
There's that as well.
The lizard people.
Reptiloid sort of race, or saurian race rather. That's out there. That's a theory. That's a theory. Maybe one for a future topic of discussion. Perhaps
the lizard people. Yeah.
So Project Serpo.
Actually, I wasn't really familiar with it at all. I had no idea until I looked into it in preparing for this show that there'd been some kind of exchange program, allegedly.
Well,
that goes way beyond a flying saucer crash, and we had some bodies and we conducted an autopsy. No, there was a survivor, and we got talking to him, and he wasn't able to contact his homeworld. But later on, his peers came and collected the bodies, and they set up an exchange program, and that goes way beyond anything I've heard before.
Fair enough. But that brings us actually very nicely to our usual summary. So, Neil, the ultimate question we've got to ask, Project Serpo, is it a real and accurate record of something that happened, or is it a load of made-up nonsense?
For something that's real and actually happened, I imagine very few people have heard of it. Even those who have an interest in UFOs, who've heard of Roswell, who have heard of Area 51, who have seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, won't have heard of Project Serpo. I hadn't heard of it before, and there seems to be surprisingly little about it online. I mean, most of the links go to books available for sale on Amazon that various people have written about it. But it was hard to find. I managed to find. Where was it on Gaia.com? I found basically a summary of it. But it's very
for
very
any of
obscure.
our listeners who do want to find out about it online and read the accounts from the horse's mouth, from the people who have actually whistleblown about this, you can go to serpo.org.
And how come there's been no movies about it?
Well, one would argue that Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a movie about it.
Because they get on the spaceship in the end, don't they? And
yes.
But that was kind of a spontaneous thing, wasn't it? It wasn't arranged by the government and signed off by the president.
No, because he even attends the classes, and they get him in, like Richard Dreyfuss's character, in at the last minute because it's look, he's been brought here, he's been led here, he's received these psychic images for a reason. So he's there with the others, and he learns all the hand signals, and so clearly they were preparing to exchange these people long before the movie, the start of the actual movie.
Okay. I really should watch that again.
It's a good film. It's worth a always worth a rewatch. And there have been documentaries about it over time, but it's like, so you say, like, why have we never heard about it? It's like anything else to do with this part of the strange things that go on in life. We don't hear about it because not enough people take it seriously.
But we hear about all sorts of other things that people don't take seriously, like Roswell, Area 51, UFO crashes, Foo Fighters.
Well, I mean, let's take Roswell, like one specific aspect of Roswell at face value, which is that the first report that it was a crashed flying saucer, or flying disc, as they very specifically said, a crashed alien flying disc came from the Air Force itself. And yet people will still be dismissive and say, oh, yeah, but it was just a weather balloon, wasn't it? So, no, I never underestimate people's ability to dismiss things just because it's easier not to believe it. And I'm willing to bet at some point in your life, Project Serpo might have been mentioned, but because you've got no real connection to it, you've got no reason to sort of pay attention to it. It's like when when you're walking down the street and you hear someone behind you, "Oh, Neil," and you turn around, they're actually talking to somebody else. You hear that much more clearly than you do any other name being shouted.
Yeah.
Is that kind of, it's the opposite of that. You don't hear about it because you don't have an interest in that sort of thing. But I bet you have actually heard about it.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking about that. We discussed Project Blue Book.
Yes.
Or it was the Robertson Committee, was it the Robertson panel?
Yes. And
there was talk about how they fabricated these stories about UFOs and just sort of slipped them out into the media as a cover for their experimental aircraft, which they didn't really want people to see, and which they would want people to. Really, the idea is that you see one of these experimental aircraft, you attribute it to your mind connects to these UFO stories you hear. So you go down to the pub and talk about how you've seen a UFO, and everyone laughs at you, and you become thoroughly discredited. And that's I think that was the idea, to discredit anyone who claimed to have seen one of these experimental
Well, that's
aircraft,
it, because that works in both ways. You know, you put out a UFO story and people say, oh, yes, well, I saw UFO. It's like, haha, we made it up. So you're nuts. You know, it discredits on both counts. But you've sidestepped the question. Really. Is it real or is it not? Go on, I'm going to nail you down on this.
I don't think it is. For me, it's a bit fanciful.
Okay, we are sat on
I don't think
opposite sides of the fence here.
Yeah, I don't think because I mean, presumably the EBs who came to Earth were kept on a very short leash. Either they resembled us enough to pass for one of us, or they were just hidden away on an aircraft base. Well, one, but we send 12 extraterrestrials. Well, to them, extra Ebens. We send 12 of ours over to their planet, and I get the impression they just sort of walk around and everyone's kind of.
Yes, but if they're an advanced civilization who is accustomed to alien life, it wouldn't be a problem. It's only to us who we're not. I mean, we're getting there. We're slowly being conditioned. I will die on that hill. But we are getting there. But, I mean, especially, back in the 60s, no, mass panic. All the rest of it. But, as always, what we really want to know is, what do you think, listeners? Is Project Serpo a load of nonsense, as Neil would have us believe? Or is it absolute verbatim whistleblowing and every bit of it true, as I would have us believe? Do let us know via the usual means. You can contact us through email by emailing aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. And not only do we want to hear what you think about this, but we also want to hear your stories as well. What are your UFO encounter experiences, if you have any? What got you into looking into UFOs in the first place, if you've not got any? And
especially if you have spent time on another planet, we'd love to hear all about your experiences.
We certainly do. But also the opposite, if you think it's all a load of nonsense and, it's psychologically quite interesting, we want to hear from you as well. It's not just a, believers only club here, is it, Neil? Well, you wouldn't be
Definitely.
here, would you?
I wouldn't be here.
So we love it when people get in touch and reach out to us, even if it's just to say hello. That's always absolutely lovely.
We do like that.
So that's it for this week, though. Do join us next time when we're staying a little bit closer to home, but we're looking at the potential alien technologies that are possibly have possibly been used in the construction of the Coral Castle.
The Coral Castle.
Miss that one. The Coral Castle. That's one for you to Google.
It is. That's something I've never heard of.
Oh, it's very interesting, the Coral Castle. It's on my bucket list of places to visit.
All right. Where is it, by the way?
It's in America.
Whereabouts?
I will tell you more details next time.
I'm intrigued. Really. I hope our listeners are.
Yes, you get part 2 next time. Fantastic. Well, yes, do join us then. In the meantime, keep watching these alien exchange programs that the government are doing. They are doing it, Neil. It really is happening. And, of course, the skies. Until next time, take care.
Catch you then. Bye-bye. Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.